We have been told that heliocentrism has been around for thousands of years, yet history reveals a very different picture. Today we're going to look at over 18 examples of what ancient peoples believed and see how it impacts our view of biblical cosmology. Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to the Dance of Life podcast, and I'm your host, Tudor Alexander. Great to be with you today as we continue our Cosmology series. A very exciting and interesting journey, hopefully, if you have an open mind. But we are now looking at ancient cosmologies today. So far, we've looked at what the Bible has to say about cosmology, so make sure you check those previous episodes out. Why cosmology matters. Very in-depth episodes to set the foundation for the rest of this journey, and it won't be too many episodes. I've got about 8 planned, and they're going to be very high intensity, very information dense. But nevertheless, make sure you go watch those in sequence because we're building up a very important journey here. Especially if you believe in the heliocentric model, please watch the previous episodes and entertain the evidence and just build your beliefs on evidence, folks. It's time to learn. It's time to learn the truth. And I don't have any agenda. I was very much into the heliocentric model and sci-fi and science fiction and traveling through space. But I have learned otherwise in the last several years of really indulging this topic. And this series is not designed to be like a flat earth conversion series or something to get you to be a flat earther. I don't think the flat earth movement, I think it's a psyop, to be honest with you. And we have a whole episode dedicated to that. My goal is for you to see the truth and to marvel at it, which is a mystery, because I don't have explanations to some very important things like what is the sun doing? What is it actually doing? And of course, both models give you these explanations, both the ball or the circle, but they're both wrong, as you will hopefully learn in the near future. But anyway, we're continuing today and we're looking at basically what ancient cultures believed. It's going to be very interesting, hopefully. I find it interesting because you see a consistent pattern. We also anyway, I just lost my place there totally. I was looking at my notes and I just kind of zoned out for a second. So yes, we will be looking at 18 examples of ancient cosmologies. Very interesting things. This is going to be very casual. It's going to be very laissez-faire type of thing. And I encourage you to go and investigate these for yourself. If you find this as an interesting topic, look into it for yourself and see, what is there documented on these various cultures. Again, this will be more of a cursory review, but you will learn that ancient peoples, by and large, were universally agreeing that the cosmology of the Earth was enclosed in some way, that the Earth was motionless, that it was flat, that we have local light sources, and essentially agreeing with biblical cosmology. Of course, they didn't necessarily have an agreement that Yahweh was the creator that made the cosmos. They had all their different mythologies and various things, but the point is, when I say cosmology and that they agree with the Bible, I don't mean necessarily that they had the same view about God, but they had the same view in general, about the place that they lived in. They weren't heliocentrists, that's the point. You also today see some interesting things, which we'll discuss later in the future episode, like I said, number 7, when we look at problems with the circle map, that they didn't believe necessarily in a circular Earth, which is very interesting. They believed in some kind of a square Earth inside a circular heavens. However that works, we can speculate on it, but nonetheless, you'll see plenty of themes of that in today's episode. More on that in the future, but the point is this: true biblical cosmology is not the same as flat Earth. That's a point that I want to reiterate throughout this series. Flat Earth and the flat Earth movement is not biblical cosmology. Biblical cosmology is much more profound and interesting. Flat Earth is a distraction to get you to accept a model that is actually easy to refute for several reasons, and we will refute it. We'll refute it in episode 7. I promise you, the Earth cannot be a circle. But of course, if that's the case, then it brings up a whole sorts of questions, which is the mystery. You live in a supernatural realm, and we're going to paint as many contours of that realm as we can, but a lot of it is a mystery, which is just phenomenal. But it points to a mysterious and supernatural creator, of course. That's the point. But anyway, they're different. So biblical cosmology, flat Earth, two different things. Make sure you keep that in mind. The truth is always much more profound as usual. And off we go. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Share with your friends, the ones that are open-minded at least, I guess. Unless you want to argue, then share it with people around you that maybe don't believe in a biblical worldview. Always will start an interesting conversation, that's for sure. But anyway, make sure you do that. It'll help you grow your ears by 18 times today. 18% return, 18 times, that would be 1,800% return on your investment of time, hopefully. Also, if you want to support me, the best way to do that is on the website. I like to mention this every so often. I don't ever want to do ads or sponsorships. Of course, my YouTube videos are monetized because if I don't monetize them, then YouTube will throw ads on there anyway, which just disgusts me. So either way, I might as well make some money off of the things I'm making, but I don't trust YouTube. YouTube is just there. It's a way to reach people. If you want to stay in touch with me, if you want to, be there in case there's some sort of, ban or whatever, you never know how these things work. The website's the best way to do it. And you can be a member there. If you want to be a paid member, you don't have to be. There's free membership and you can have access to all my content. I post everything in the Bible studies section. So it's free. You have free resources as a member, like all my encouragement audios. Everything that I've ever produced, really, as far as like Christian stuff, is free. I don't charge for that. However, when I put a piece of content out, after a week, there's a paywall that comes up on the website. And so if you want to access it and search for my content, access old posts, that's one thing I like about Substack is that they provide a search engine for my content, which you don't have on YouTube. So that's a very superior feature because it's nice for research. And anyway, if you want to do that, you also get a ton of perks and benefits and other things that I've created, benefits like music, courses, books of various kinds that I've written. So you can check that out. It's only $50 a year, $5 a month. And again, that's the only thing that I ever plan on really doing to make money as far as this goes. People keep wanting to like plushie dolls, like little Fennec Fox, but maybe we'll do something like that. It's not a huge item on my list, maybe after I'm done with all these major works that I need to put out. But either way, that's what I do. I don't ever want to sell gimmicky products. I don't ever want to interrupt your time with, sales pitches of various kinds, like with snake oil and things like that, and carbon 60 and gold and things that people do. I don't ever want to do that, and I don't ever plan on doing that. So we all have to eat to some degree, right? So make sure if you want to support me, you can do that. If you want to donate, you can also do it through the website. A lot of people have asked me that. It's on mobile, it's a little obscured, so you have to go to the top of the menu and scroll to the right or to the left, whichever way it is, but scroll over and you'll see a donate button there. So if you want to do that, I appreciate it. All the people who have ever donated, I really thank you and appreciate you for being in my life and for being hungry for the truth. That's what matters most, folks, is that you're hungry for the truth. And the people who are hungry for the truth will see the value in what I produce and will enjoy it. Whether you want to support me or not, that doesn't matter. My point is that you are hungry and that you gobble the truth up. And that the works that I put out inspire you to do your own research. Just like today. Again, today's going to be very casual. We're going to look at some things, over 18 examples or so. But I encourage you to go do your own research and be a Berean. That's the point. So, first part of this is really answering the question, why should we consider the ancients? Why are they even relevant to consider? Well, they were around the time of the Hebrews, around the time that people wrote the Bible, so that's important because, God's people have always been surrounded by other people, and so it's interesting to see what they believed. whether they're true or not doesn't matter, just on a historical documentation. Also, ancient people, very importantly, were able to predict the motions of the sun, the moon, the stars with incredible accuracy. They built monoliths that were aligned with the stars, with equinoxes, with solstices. So they had very advanced knowledge of the heavens and how things worked and were able to predict. That's an important point. Keep that in mind. And very importantly, they all had very similar cosmologies as far as the place that you're in. All of this shows us pretty clearly that the ancient beliefs are in alignment with the Bible in the sense of an enclosed, flat, motionless plane with local light sources, and the creator or the spirits above, and they're very nearby. Because of the ancient culture's achievements, it's pretty fair, I think, to assume that they were right about their cosmology. They all believed in relatively the same thing. None of them believed in a ball spinning in space at, thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of miles. Nobody believed that. No, they had no reason to believe that. And yet they were also very advanced and were able to predict things with great accuracy. Some of these structures still align with the stars. This is another important point to keep in mind. Like the Pyramid of Giza and how they have those fascinating structures that point, if you draw a line, they point to like the Orion's belt, I believe. Might be a different constellation, but I think it's Orion's belt. Either way, the pyramids are aligned with various constellations and they point to various stars. These types of things would not be possible, folks, if the Earth was moving at 60,000 miles around the solar system and the sun was pulling everything around the galaxy at 600,000 miles. I mean, over a period when was the Pyramid of Giza built? Let's say 2350 BC, I think is the agreed upon date. So 4,000 years ago. How long of a distance is in a void? 4,000 years, if you're going at 600-something thousand miles an hour, you should not have the same stars in the sky that align. And yet some of these things still align, which is fascinating. Which tells you that the heavens are the ones that are moving, not the Earth. It also proves that there are other ways that can explain what you see. This is an important point. Do you understand how important that is? Because the ancients all could predict solar and lunar events and stars with great accuracy. And that tells you that there are other models to explain what you see. Heliocentrism is not objective truth. In fact, you'll see later in some of these other episodes I've got planned where there are quotes from Einstein and all these other people like Niels Bohr and whatever. They said basically like whether the Earth is moving or the heavens are moving is just a matter of perspective. So they know the truth. But of course, they're propped up to deceive you, and there's an agenda behind heliocentrism, which we talked about in the first episode, why cosmology matters. But people believe heliocentrism is the pinnacle of science. It's not. It's really not. These ancient cultures, which were very advanced, we're going to look at a couple examples, were very scientific, obviously, and they could have predictive models. But the predictive model is completely different than the heliocentric model, which claims to be so scientific and, because they can predict certain things. And it's true. Look, we have to acknowledge that the heliocentric model explains what we see. It explains what we see, okay? But here's an important distinction you need to put in your mind. Just because there's an explanation doesn't mean that it's the truth. Do you understand? Just because something is predictive doesn't mean it's the truth. So you always have to evaluate the body of evidence and make a case on what you believe. You can't be so easily swayed by anything that seems to explain the particular... look at how people misinterpret verses in the Bible, just in general. They look at one verse and say, oh, you see, it's this. Well, how are you sure that that's what it means? It seems to explain, at least on face value, but then if you do deeper digging, you realize that, okay, this is actually taken out of context. So these are the types of errors we need to avoid. Now, very important, I want to make a couple caveats. I am not glorifying the old world order. I am not glorifying Tartaria or the ancient knowledge of the ancients and how cool they were. Not at all. Not at all whatsoever. I am not talking about ancient aliens or anything of the sort, of Anunnaki, of all these things. Look, I believe that ancient cultures were very advanced. I think there's history that has been hidden from us. However, very big asterisk, the people who tend to talk about these things always go full on into ancient aliens, occult knowledge, Tartaria, free energy, all this kind of stuff. This is not what I'm doing. They were advanced, but very likely because they had communion with fallen angels, received secret knowledge. They were very corrupt. We know that from the Bible. So they were very advanced, but that doesn't mean they were good or that the ancient world was good, because we know that the ancient world was a new world order. And that's the whole point with this Tartaria thing, which is another part of the flat earth psyop, is glorifying the ancients so that, we got to return to this old world free energy type of situation. Just a psyop. The point is, though, that the evidence is undeniable that they weren't primitive. They were not primitive, folks. This is the narrow road. You see the dualities all the time. One side says, oh, they were stupid, they didn't know anything, heliocentrism. The other side, that's like the dark, right? Or whichever one you want to pick is the dark, I guess. But one of them is dark, one of them is light. Or one of them is left, one of them is right. One of them says, oh, they were stupid and primitive, therefore heliocentrism is the pinnacle of scientific evolution and thinking. Okay, that's one side. The other side says, no, they weren't primitive. They had secret knowledge and free energy, and they were just amazing. And, they had all these, free energy devices, and everybody was living for long, and they helped each other, and it was just a glorious world order. Okay, well, that's like the New Age side of it. Do you see the point? It's like there are two sides that give you a little bit of truth, but obviously they're lying to you, and they're designed to take you off the narrow path. So our goal today is to see the narrow path with this. And the narrow path is acknowledging that these people were advanced. They were very advanced in their way of observing the skies and in creating various architectures. But they're also, corrupt. It's not the Bible's cosmology they believed in specifically in terms of everything the Bible says, but they were in alignment with it in terms of the physical layout of where you live. And that's the point of today. So I want to look at a few examples before we get started with the actual cosmology stuff. I want to look at a few examples of how advanced these people were. For example, Baalbek, if we go to, all right, there we go. Let's go. Baalbek stones are 6 massive Roman-worked stone blocks in Baalbek, ancient Heliopolis, Lebanon, characterized by a megalithic gigantism unparalleled in antiquity. This is the stone of the pregnant woman. These things are huge. The smallest three are part of a podium wall in the Roman complex of the Temple of Jupiter. Baal, Heliopotan Zeus, on Tel Baalbek are known as trilithon. Each of these is estimated to be around 800 tons. 800-ton blocks. Somehow they were just moved around and into it. Of course, if you looked into these things, look how enormous these things are. It's just insane. And of course, some people have theorized that there may be some Nephilim involved in creating some of these structures because, there were giants in those days. And look at this. These are huge. You can see a tiny little person here. And these people did not have construction equipment. In fact, I don't even think with the construction equipment we could create such things. And you have to be honest with that. People try to explain, the pyramids were built with logs and this, and it's like, really? Come on now. There's the Baghdad Battery. The Baghdad Battery is the name given to a set of 3 artifacts which were found together: a ceramic pot, a tube of copper, and a rod of iron. It was discovered in present-day Iraq in 1936, close to the metropolis of Ctesiphon, the capital of Parthian, in between 150 BC to 223 AD. 223 AD, my goodness. And the Sasanian empires, and is believed to date from either of those periods. So it's, 1,500 years old to 2,000 years old, potentially. Its origin and purpose remain unclear. It was hypothesized by Wilhelm Koenig, at the time director of the National Museum of Iraq, that the object found is a galvanic cell, possibly used for electroplating or some kind of electrotherapy. But there's no electroplated object known from this period, and the claims are universally rejected by archaeologists. Of course, it doesn't fit with their model. An alternative explanation is that it functioned as a storage vessel for sacred scrolls. There you go, just primitive people doing their thing. But people have analyzed these types of things, and you can build basically a battery, a primitive quote unquote, battery with very simple ingredients. So you wonder, and of course there's also Egyptian, this reminds me of like the Egyptian hieroglyphs that they have, like with giant light bulbs and things like that. There are things out there, folks, that we have been lied to about. And again, my point is not to glorify the ancients here. I'm not saying, look how wonderful they are, they're just amazing, we should go back to that, love and light. Absolutely not. But you need to realize that the ancient history is not what you've been told in many ways. Here's the Antikythera mechanism. If you looked into this, Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek hand-powered orrery model of the solar system, described as the oldest known example of an analog computer used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance. How could they do that if they didn't have a predictive model of the universe? And of course, all these people believed in an enclosed flat plane. But this is an interesting thing. You can look into it yourself. Again, I just encourage you, today's very casual, I encourage you to look into these things yourself. This is Advanced Machining in Ancient Egypt. This is from the globeeducationproject.org, ironically enough, right? But it's written by Christopher P. Dunn. Petrie also studied the sawing methods of the pyramid builders. He concluded that their saws must have been at least 9 feet long. Again, there are indications of modern methods of sawing on the artifacts Petrie was studying. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid has saw marks on the northern end that are identical to saw marks I've seen on granite surface plates. Today, these saw marks could reflect either the differences in the aggregate dimensions of a wire band saw with the wire and traps to do the cutting, or the side-to-side movement of the wire of the wheels that drive the wire. So basically, they're trying to figure out, how did the Egyptians cut these blocks? And of course, there are also drill holes that are circular, which you'll read about, which is very fascinating. The result of either of these conditions is a series of slight grooves. The distance between the grooves is determined by the feed rate and either the distance between this variation in diameter of the saw or the diameter of the wheels. The distance between the grooves of the coffer inside the king's chamber is approximately 0.05 of an inch. They give you these little drawings of where the saw marks are, supposedly. Egyptian artifacts representing tubular drilling are the most clearly astounding and conclusive evidence yet presented to identify the knowledge and technology existing in prehistory. And these people are like, they're regular archaeologists, skeptics, I think. They're not people that are like Tartaria, ancient world kind of stuff. Moving on. The ancient pyramid builders used a technique for drilling holes that is commonly known as trepanning. This technique leaves a central core and is an efficient means of hole making. For holes that didn't go all the way through the material, they reached a desired depth and then broke the core out of the hole. It was not only evident in the holes that Petrie was studying, but also the cores cast aside by the masons who had done the trepanning. Regarding tool marks, which left a spiral groove on a core taken out of a hole drilled into a piece of granite, he wrote the following. The spiral of the cut sinks 0.1 inch into the circumference of 6 inches, or 1 in 60, a rate of plowing out of the quartz and feldspar which is astonishing. I think this rivals even modern methods of drilling, especially you're talking about quartz and granite, which are very hard substances. After reading this, I had to agree with Petrie. This was an incredible feed rate for drilling into any material, let alone granite. I was completely confounded as to how a drill could achieve this feed rate. Petrie was also astounded by these artifacts that he attempted to explain them at 3 different points in one chapter. To an engineer in the 1880s, what Petrie was looking at was an anomaly. The characteristics of the holes, the cores that came out of them, and the tool marks indicated an impossibility. Three distinct characteristics of the hole and core makes the artifacts extremely remarkable. And give you like kind of how they think this happened. But here are kind of the qualities. A taper on both a taper on both the hole and the core. A symmetrical helical groove following these tapers, which shows that the drill advanced into the granite at a feed rate of 0.1 inch per revolution of the drill. The confounding fact that the spiral groove cut deeper through the quartz than through the softer feldspar. In conventional machining, the reverse would be the case. Mr. Donald Rahn of Rand Granite Surface Plate Company, Dayton, Ohio, told me that in 1983 that in drilling granite, diamond drills rotating at 900 revolutions per minute penetrate at a rate of 1 inch in 5 minutes. This works out to be 0.0002 inches per revolution, meaning that the ancient Egyptians were able to cut their granite with a feed rate that was 500 times greater. Now, you may not be I'm not an expert on, drilling and engineering and this kind of stuff, but that's the point. The ancient Egyptians were able to do what we do today with drilling granite with diamond drills. They were able to have whatever they were doing was 500 times more efficient than what we do today. Of course, maybe from 1983, maybe there's some advances in drilling, but either way, that is astounding that people 4,000 years before you were doing things, 500 times more efficiently through these enormous pieces of stone, which is just fascinating. This is the Longyu Caves in China, I believe. They're a group of 24 artificial sandstone caverns located in Fenghuang Hill, near the village of Xianbeikun on the Ku River in the Longyun County in Kuzhou Prefecture in China. It is unknown when the caves were created. They are mentioned in a 17th century poem by Yu Jun, and clay from pots dated to between 206 BC and 23 AD was found in silt within the caves. So you can see these giant, and this is not the only one. There's a bunch of them. I didn't pull all of them up, but they find these giant caves. Some of them are in sandstone, some of them are in other materials, but they're basically carved out. And I mean, there are even more impressive ones than this, where basically the walls are completely smooth. I forget where they are. I didn't find the name for them, but I've seen them before, where basically they discover, I think it was in China, maybe it was in India, one of these Sri Lanka places, where they have these giant chambers, like huge, that are completely smooth. We're talking, you can't even tell like how they carved it. Completely smooth, and they're designed to resonate, to use acoustics and sound. And of course, the ancients had all sorts of sound-related type of technology and types of things. So if you know what I'm talking about. This is the Terracotta Army. Of course, maybe if you've heard about this, it's a ton of these people that were discovered that were just carved. And just very strange stuff in the ancient world. It's a collection of sculptures depicting the armies of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. It is a form of funerary art buried within the emperor in 210 to 209 BC with the purpose of protecting him in his afterlife. The figures dating from approximately the 200s BC were discovered in 1974 by local farmers in Lintong County outside Xi'an, China. So again, very interesting. I mean, people did some crazy things with stone back in the day, and it's just fascinating. Who knows how these things were created? Maybe there's a simple explanation, but if you've looked into these things, they are very, very fascinating. Let's see what this is about. Something interesting. Let's find out.
Step wells. I want you to listen to my buddy Baseforge here. Again, he's so close. It's so awesome. So close, but just it's not the exact frequency that he's going with. It's the wavelengths are more important.
Words cannot describe what I'm about to show you. This is a step well. It's in India. Some of them go even 13 stories into the ground. They're like inverted pyramids. If you're like me, I was like, cool, pretty well, whatever. But these are traditional ancient wells. Greece, ancient China, that's ancient Egypt. What makes somebody want to build this when they could easily do something like that? It's India. You know it's going to be wild. There's 3,000 of these. And the secret, as always, is in sound. So this is a Chladni plate. When you put sand on a metal plate and draw a bowstring across it, it makes geometry. This should look pretty familiar. That's because this is 3296 hertz. That step well is modeled off of this frequency. Obviously, it's a square that's going to line up, but line up the corners to the node on that frequency. Then you have 4 nodes that correspond to the 4 stairs going down at the top level of the step well. You can follow this all the way down. Now, if you've read the Vedas, this is going to be no shock, but Hindu architecture, especially the pillars, are encoded with sound. That pillar in particular shows...
Yeah, you see how these things, this is what we were just talking about, that they're very much in line with acoustic and sound types of things. These things resonate, they're carved super smoothly. Some of them have basically, like this pillar, you can't really tell, but some of these pillars are basically made in such a way that they're cymatics, if you know what cymatics are, like wave patterns. And I mean, it's
in octave ratios if you count the notches. Back to the step well.
Look at this other paper I've got here. Using acoustic waves that are resonant to whatever structure that they are in, you can get them to continuously build up and cause cavitation. Through the process of causing hydrodynamic and acoustic cavitation, you will cause sterilization and disinfection of the water. Building these step wells to specific geometries that are resonant to specific wavelengths will cause disinfection of the water. And that's not even counting for any sort of resonant mixing that functionally separates solids just by the acoustics. It's beautiful. Like, it's so cool. It's all you gotta do is build a well that's a certain shape and it disinfects the water. Let's talk about...
Yeah, so again, you can look into these types of things, but India is full of this stuff. They have all kinds of very interesting acoustic-oriented things and archaeology and so on. Oh, here's another one from Egypt.
To try to explain the 100-ton granite boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara in Egypt. There's 24 of these massive granite enclosures, and you won't believe the official explanation for them. All 24 of them were moved into this underground complex dating to about 1400 BC, where they now sit. And the craftsmanship of these boxes is once again insane. Perfect right angles and parallel sides leveled with machine-like precision, you know the drill. Made of granite, which reminder is harder than steel, using bronze and stone tools that are softer than granite. Like, you know, using a plastic knife to cut through a car door. Try that out and let me know how it goes. But never mind that. I've already said it 100 times about all these other artifacts and ancient architecture throughout ancient Egypt, because these boxes, they're different. Let's start with the sheer size, about 100 tons each, and barely even fit through the hallways they would need to pass through to be placed in the pits that they currently sit in. As we can see from this unfinished box here that was abandoned in one of the passageways at the Serapeum. If you couldn't tell, they're also made from a single piece of granite each, so it's not like they took smaller pieces and just glued them together. One big ass brick of granite, hollowed out from the inside into a perfect box, absolutely zero room for any mistakes. And I find it extremely difficult to imagine how, once again, this sawing method could hollow out a granite box like this with flawless accuracy. Because 100 tons is a lot. The experts claim that we might be able to move 100-ton objects using primitive methods as long as we had enough people, which according to them is about 400. Tell me, how on earth would 400 people be able to coordinate moving 100-ton blocks in cramped hallways like these and around these super tight corners? For reference, this is what 400 people looks like. All stuffed in there. Not to mention, the boxes were perfectly placed in the center of rooms even smaller than the hallways. Where do we have room for 400 people there? And I don't know if you noticed, but these hallways and pits are currently lit up with modern lighting, which the ancient Egyptians obviously didn't have. This Serapeum would have been pitch black day and night 3,400 years ago, but of course they still had fire and torches that served this exact purpose, right? Except they found no evidence of soot, the leftover scorches from torch fire, anywhere on the walls or ceilings in this complex, as they would normally find in dark underground passageways. Any commonsensical person would imagine that a project like this would have taken thousands of hours of work in torch-lit chambers, yet not a shred of proof of that anywhere. So what did they use to see in the dark?
There's that light bulb that I was telling you about with the Egyptians.
Back then. And the entire Saqqara necropolis itself is dug into limestone bedrock. There's no granite found here, so they couldn't have chiseled these in place either, as some may suggest. What we do know is that these boxes were important, like super duper important. But for what? Clearly an undertaking of this scale would have surely held a higher purpose for their civilization. I mean, they definitely weren't tombs. They're obviously way too big, right? Nope, they still call them tombs. Made for, get this, the pharaoh's prized bulls. Yes, bull tombs. They said it, so it must be real. Now, upon discovery in 1850, most of these boxes were already open, their lids either gone or moved over, so whatever was inside had likely already been stolen. You know, by those pesky thieves that conveniently steal everything that historians have no evidence
Smithsonian
of. But they found one box that was completely sealed, lid fully intact, so the bull skeleton must still be inside. A perfect opportunity to prove this theory. Well, firstly, they couldn't lift the lid, which is only about 30 tons, as they weren't able to get enough manpower in the room to even budge it. Yet the Egyptians somehow moved the entire 100-ton blocks themselves into those rooms thousands of years earlier. Makes sense. So they did the only logical thing that anyone from the 1800s would do in such a scenario. Blow it the f up with TNT. Yeah, for real. Archaeology was pretty savage back then, which finally revealed the truth that the boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara were filled with nothing. Absolutely nothing. No mummy, no bull skeletons, no gold or treasure, nada. They did find mummified bull carcasses in a bunch of wooden sarcophagi, as would be expected, in an area called the Lesser Gallery, but not a single one found in any of the granite boxes. Cause yes, to be fair, the Apis bull was a highly revered deity worshipped by the ancient Egyptians, symbolizing fertility in agriculture and the physical embodiment of their god Ptah. Hope I pronounced that right. I just find it hard to believe that a project of this colossal magnitude, which would have taken years, if not decades to complete, was dedicated to stashing the bodies of dead animals. While at the same time, mummified bulls were found in much smaller, simpler wooden sarcophagi in the Lesser Gallery, which is oddly close to the public and no images of those exist either, allegedly proving that this is how they stored bull remains, not this. But then again, I'm just an idiot. Still others claim these boxes may have been power conductors that generated electricity for their civilization, part of the infamous Giza power plant theory, which is a fringe idea that may or may not be true, and I explained it in full in a previous video. So, are these really bull tombs, or just a steaming load of bullshit? I dare you.
Anyway, you can see that this is not possible based on what they tell you, so that means there's something else going on. Who knows what that is? I have looked into the Giza pyramid theory. I think it's interesting. The problem is a lot of the people who are actually looking into it, they're very fringe and they're very Tartarian, you know, and old world order was good, that type of thing. So it's really tricky with this kind of stuff. That's why I said you have to use discernment when you're looking into things like ancient history and true ancient history, because most of the people who are talking about it are very new agey and, you know, that. But there is something to be said about a mystery. How the heck were they able to bring such enormous boxes in there and made of granite and perfectly cut? I mean, it defies all explanation. So they weren't that stupid, obviously. This is from Reddit. You can look up giant hidden pyramids in various places in the world. This is China. And this is a whole thing. It's a whole rabbit hole. But there are these pyramids that are not just in Egypt. Of course, we know that there's in South America, there's pyramids as well. But there's pyramids in other places too. And it seems that they are hiding some of these. Like in China, they have these giant structures. Also like in Bosnia, I believe I have one here with Bosnia somewhere. Yeah, Bosnian pyramid. This is a fascinating, like, look at this. This is a fascinating thing. And of course, people say, oh no, it's just a hill, it's just a mountain. And the guy who was researching it, you know, he was researching it for quite a while, but then he was discredited and so on. I mean, it's just the usual conspiracy type of stuff, just like I said, with the Smithsonian, where they capitalize on every new thing just to spin it really quick so they can hide the truth. So these are there, very interesting. This is an enormous structure. The pyramid in Bosnia is enormous. And of course, again, people will say, it's just a hill, it's just a mountain. But again, does that look like a mountain to you? Look at that. That is a very clear pyramid. And of course, they haven't allowed anybody to excavate anymore after the guy started, which is very fishy. Like, okay, the truth doesn't fear investigation. If it's a mountain, then go excavate. Go ahead. What's the issue? What is the problem? This is from the Incas. If you've studied like South American, you know, cultures and things like that, like you have these giant walls, again, with these stones that are enormous, that are cut in such a way that you can't even put a playing card between them, with such strange cuts and perfectly conjoined together. It's just fascinating. And this is Machu Picchu. How the heck do they get up all the way at the mountain and create such a profound, you know, quarry of buildings and structures that are aligned with the sun and the moon and the stars? I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Here's some more walls. This is a curved wall from Machu Picchu. And some of these are you know, I guess might, like this curved wall, maybe you might find some explanation for it. Like, okay, but still look at the cuts on here. They're so precise and they're curving. And you've got these are the megalithic ones that are really just, I don't see an explanation for these. How were they able to get these stones? Look how enormous these stones are. And look, here's a person for reference. You can look this up if you're listening to it. This is the terrace wall at Sacsayhuaman in somewhere around Machu Picchu, I think. It's an Incan thing. But these things are huge. Look at this. They're totally huge, and they're cut so precisely. Doesn't make any sense if they're primitive. This is Wikipedia Mayan astronomy. Mayan astronomy is the study of the moon, planets, Milky Way, sun, and astronomical phenomena by the pre-Columbian Maya civilization. The classic Maya, in particular, developed some of the most accurate pre-telescope astronomy in the world, aided by their fully developed writing system and their positional numerical system, both of which are fully indigenous to Mesoamerica. The classic Maya understood many astronomical phenomenon. For example, their estimate of the length of the synodic month was more accurate than the Ptolemies, and their calculation of the length of the tropical solar year was more accurate than that of the Spanish when the latter first arrived. Many temples from the Maya architecture have features oriented to celestial events, i.e. eclipses, equinoxes, those kind of things. People understood the heavens, folks, and these people were very, very advanced. They had advanced numerical systems. They had advanced writing systems. They were advanced peoples. Look at the civilizations they built. It's fascinating. We also have Easter Island. I didn't really pull it up, but you have Easter Island. You can go look into that. It's a whole can of worms with that one. How did they manage to make all those statues? And a lot of those statues that are just discovering, they actually go under the ground. They're not just heads. They go under the ground, which is really crazy. How did they get under the ground is another question. The Nephilim, I have a whole episode on the Nephilim in my Afterlife series, where there's plenty of evidence for giants in the ancient world and even after the flood. Of course, the pyramids, we looked at a few of those things, etc., etc. There's out-of-place artifacts, if you've ever dug into that. Just look up out-of-place artifacts. Fascinating stuff that people have found that's just like, that doesn't make any sense with our historical timeline. It just really doesn't. So what's the conclusion? Well, there's more to history than what we've been told, folks. And again, this is supposed to be very casual. It's not my goal to really create some deep dive into ancient history, but hopefully you have done a little bit of that on yourself and you realize, okay, history is not what we've been told. Now, again, there's a narrow road to walk there because some people say, well, everything's a lie. You can't trust anything. You can't trust the Bible. It's all been a lie. And you just don't know. That's an extreme. And of course, there's the other extreme that goes with the mainstream narrative, which is, the pyramids were built with logs and 400 people and so on and so forth. I mean, it's just nonsense. So you have to find the narrow road approach. And the narrow road approach is that, well, ancient cultures were advanced. That's very clear. In ways that are very probably different from our understanding of what advanced means, right? We define ourselves by our cell phones and, various things, but these people built giant megalithic structures and they were aligned with the sun, moon, and stars, and they had very different ways of seeing things in some ways. In some ways, there's nothing new under the sun. So there's that. We also know that our world is highly supernatural with the evidence for giants, fallen angels, the spirit realm. Our world is a supernatural world. So truth is stranger than fiction. I hope you embrace that. And what's the point? Well, the point was that these cultures are not primitive. They're really not. They're probably more advanced than us in many ways. Who knows? Again, I don't want you to get lost in old world glorification and Tartaria and ancient aliens and all this kind of nonsense, because there is that aspect to it. But there's also hoaxes that people have made with history, of course, to discredit these types of things. So there's a lot of misinformation. But the reality is that the ancients were very advanced. I think that's pretty well documented, even the cursory review that we looked at. Even the few things that we saw, you can tell that this is just not in alignment with the narrative that you've been given. Something is off, for sure. And almost all of the ancient cultures believed in an enclosed, flat plane with a local light source, some sort of firmament, circular heavens. What does all this tell you? Well, what it tells you is the Bible is right, because we know the Bible is the Word of God. Of course, pagan sources are not to be trusted as an equal source, right? But we can see historically that if they point to the same thing, then it confirms even more the word of the Bible. So heliocentrism is wrong, folks. Nobody's ever believed in it. The Greeks, through Eratosthenes, began to believe in a circular ball earth. The Egyptians, at some point, I believe, changed into a ball earth too. As we're going to be documenting all this history in a future episode. But you will see also next time, speaking of Eratosthenes, the fatal error that he made in his famous experiment that everybody likes to bring up, that, we knew that the earth was a ball since Eratosthenes 2,000 plus years ago. Not true. Not true at all. Eratosthenes made a major mistake. And if you understand that mistake, then you have a much more solid ground to stand on in your debates on this particular topic. When did heliocentrism show up? Well, with Eratosthenes, it was around 200 BC. Then you had things like the Emerald Tablet, which is an occult work around 700 to 800 AD. You had the Vedic text in India around 500 AD. And then, of course, the Islamic world started to question heliocentrism. Although you'll see, even in the Quran, there's a couple of interesting verses we'll look at that show you that the Quran teaches an enclosed cosmology. Nevertheless, the Islamic world was very infiltrated by Gnosticism very early on. I think right after Muhammad's death, a man named Abdullah ibn Mayyam, who was a Jew, by the way, and he was a mystic, and he basically infiltrated Islam. And you can read all about that in my Did the Catholic Church Create Islam? Also in my End Times series towards the end. What's the role of Islam? Those 2 episodes, we talk about Islam quite a bit, and you can see the occult influences there. But what's the point? You also had Galileo, Copernicus, Newton, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment. All these things were just the revival of the old mystery religion of the ages coming to the forefront. All of these people we will document very, very deeply. Galileo, Copernicus, Newton, and many others, Eratosthenes, Pythagoras. They're all occultists, folks. You need to realize that the common myth that we always knew the world was round, that's a myth. Heliocentrism didn't really start becoming mainstream until, several hundred years ago, which before that was thousands and thousands of years of a particular worldview. And of course, if you understand the trajectory of history with the cross and then the church age of being kind of Satan's last stand, basically, you understand why these things came to the forefront and now everybody believes in heliocentrism. Whereas, 2,000 years ago, that wasn't the case whatsoever. The ancient world was not heliocentric. It was geocentric. And it was very advanced in their astronomical knowledge. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that you've been lied to. Hopefully you've realized that by now, and you will entertain the evidence. But now let's move on to ancient cosmologies. Let's see what there is to see. This is from... Gosh, this thing always gets wider for some stupid reason. I think it has to do with... See, I have 2 monitors, and so I think it just gets crazy. This is Cosmology in the Muslim World. And did I have a highlight here? I think I did somewhere. Let's see. Cosmology in the Muslim World. And it looks like I didn't. Let's see if the top says Islamic cosmology. Okay, I'll be right back. And we're back. So here we are with the cosmology in the Muslim world. I highlighted a couple things here that were very interesting. This is going to be echoed in a future episode when we talk about the heliocentric conspiracy, which will be a very long and in-depth episode with history and the evolution of heliocentrism. And you can see how the devil, again, if you understand what the Bible says, you don't have to be a history expert, folks. Revelation 13:2, the dragon gave the beast his power and throne and great authority, meaning out of all of the Antichrist avenues, the devil chose the Catholic Church and the papal power to give his power and throne and great authority to. Out of all the vehicles that he's created, all the pagan religions, all of the secret societies, all of the mystery cults, the devil chose the Catholic Church to integrate all of these things. Mystery Babylon will be the mystery religion coming to the forefront and manifesting in one ideal that the world will follow after. And of course, in order to do that, all these threads that the devil started before the cross to deceive people, they have to be integrated now. You see the point? And you're going to see that in the history and when we look at the history of the heliocentric deception. But here you can see, for example, in the cosmology of the Muslim world, you will see that the Quran teaches, and we'll look at examples of a flat earth cosmology. However, that didn't last very long because the Islamic world was very quickly infiltrated by mysticism, and people started to go the way of the wind, of the pagan way. Islamic cosmology is the cosmology of Islamic societies. Islamic cosmology is not a singular unitary system, but it is inclusive of a number of cosmological systems, including Quranic cosmology, the cosmology of the Hadith collections, as well as those of Islamic astronomy and astrology. Broadly, cosmological concepts themselves can be divided into thought concerning the physical structure of the cosmos and the origin of the cosmos, cosmogony. So cosmography and cosmogony, those are the two distinctions. But in the Quran, you see Quranic cosmology. It says the cosmos is primarily constituted of 7 heavens and earth. The firmament are solid structures, or the firmaments, and are held up by God's power and without visible pillars. Above them is the throne of God, a solid structure. Plainly, the Quranic earth is flat, and 7 flat earths are piled on top of one another like a stack of plates. So the Quran very clearly teaches a flat, enclosed cosmology. Shape of the earth. Traditionalists advocate the notion of a flat earth and rejected notions of a round earth once it's been introduced by the discovery of Hellenistic astronomy. So one pagan system cross-pollinate into another, and eventually one homogeneous idea, which is the heliocentric model that we have today. Especially the astronomical paradigm developed by Ptolemy and elaborated most extensively in his Almagest. Debate over the shape of the earth raged on in the medieval Islamic world, including among Kalam theologians. Multiverse. Al-Ghazali, in The Incoherence of the Philosophers, defends the Ash'ari doctrine of a created universe that is temporarily finite against the Aristotelian doctrine of the eternal universe. In doing so, he proposed the modal theory of possible worlds, arguing that their actual world is the best of all possible worlds, from among all the alternate timelines and world histories that God could have possibly created. By the way, this is a view that some people are starting to hold to today in terms of Christian salvation. It's called Molinism, and we'll talk about it in a future episode when I get to the salvation series. After this one, after the cosmology series, we're going to do a very in-depth and robust series on the gospel and salvation and a lot of things related to it. And one of the episodes I have planned for that, which will be far in the future from the time of this video, but it's going to be on Molinism and why it's false. Molinism was actually developed by a Jesuit, Molina, that's what it's named after. And it was a very clever way of attacking, again, the sovereign grace of God through salvation, of attacking predestination. And it's basically trying to reconcile like this multiple universes, and God created the best possible one, and you're living in the one, maybe in another one you were, worse off, and so on. It's just such gaslighting. But the multiverse idea has been around for a long time, folks. There's nothing new under the sun. This was around, I don't know when this guy lived, but it was around the 8th, 9th centuries, maybe after that. But these things are relatively new in the 7,000 year or whatever history of the earth. So just so you realize. There's another thing I highlighted here. Reception of Hellenistic astronomy. Much of the 9th century astronomy in the Islamic world revolved around the dissemination of the astronomical work of Ptolemy, primarily through his Almagest. Translations of it were produced, and summaries and commentaries of it were also written. In 850, Al-Farghani wrote his own summary of the work, titled Kitab fi Jawani Ilm al-Nujum, a compendium of the science of the stars, a summary of Ptolemaic cosmography. So, the Greeks, who were pagans and part of the mystery religion, influenced the Muslims, who were pagans and part of the mystery religion, and the devil is weaving all of his threads together. And of course, today those threads are in a nice, tightly woven little tapestry with NASA at the forefront and the false prophet of the United States that has created the heliocentric lie through its false signs and wonders, like the moon landing, which of course never happened. And, now we have Mars and, Elon Musk and all these various things, the ISS. These are just false signs and wonders that the false prophet is working to cement the mystery religion into your mind. And as you will learn in episode 7 of this series, heliocentrism cannot be ever divorced from occult practice and mysticism. It can't. Everywhere you look, from the very beginning of the earliest records we have, all the people in heliocentrism that shaped it were occultists, and they were mysticists. Early heliocentric models, the Hellenistic Greek astronomer Seleucus of Seleucia, who advocated a heliocentric model in the 2nd century, right around the time that Eratosthenes was, wrote a work that was later translated into Arabic. There you go. Don't worry, the devil's been very busy, folks, and once you see it for good. A fragment of his work has survived only in Arabic translation, which was later referred to by Persian philosopher Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi. I think we talked about al-Razi previously. In the later 19th century, Jafar ibn Muhammad Abu Mashar al-Bakhti Abu Masar developed a planetary model which some have interpreted as the heliocentric model. This is due to his orbital revolutions of the planets being given as heliocentric revolutions rather than geocentric revolutions. And the only known planetary theory in which this occurs is the heliocentric theory. His work on the planetary theory was not survived, but his astronomical data was later recorded by al-Hashimi, Abu Rayyan, al-Biruni, and al-Sisi. In the early 11th century, it's around 1000, al-Biruni had met several Indian scholars who believed in a rotating Earth in his Indica. He discusses the theories on the Earth's rotation and supported by Brahmagupta and other Indian astronomers, while the canon Masudicus al-Biruni writes that gosh, these names are so hard to pronounce. Anyway, this person's followers, Bayata's followers, assigned the first movement from east to west to the Earth and the second movement from west to east to the fixed stars. So these people were starting to theorize, and the mystery religion was forming. You have to remember, what's the end? The end is that the mystery religion will come to the forefront as one unified thing, specifically through the Catholic Church. So the devil has worked very eagerly and hard to integrate all the threads that he had created through these various pagan cultures, because his time is short. Jesus is coming back, so he's got to be worshipped. And now the only way to be worshipped is to have the whole world unite into one mentality. And that's going to happen through the Catholic Church. And I talk about them in my end times and all my other videos, of course, if you've watched them. But what's the point with all this? That the Quran teaches a flat earth. But, as you saw, it got infiltrated very quickly by mysticism and by other pagan ideas from India, from the Greeks, from so on and so forth. And again, once you realize that the Greeks were wrong with their Eratosthenes measurements of the curvature of the earth and all that stuff, it's just bogus math, folks, and we will prove that. This is from the Quran, chapter 2, verse 22. There's a couple of different renderings from it, but one of them I highlighted was this. It says, worship, I got to zoom out here. And it's so tiny, teeny tiny. Okay, let's see. Worship God who has rendered the earth a floor for you and a sky as a dome for you, and has sent water down from the sky to produce fruits for your sustenance. So the earth is a floor, and the sky is a dome. That's the Quran, chapter 2, verse 22. Some of these aren't super explicit, but it's interesting. It is he who created the night and the day, the sun and the moon, each swimming in the sky. So there's a sense that the luminaries are in the firmament, just like the Bible says. This is from, I forget what that verse was that I just cited, but anyway, it's in there. You can look it up. This is chapter 77, verse 25. Have we not made the earth a container? I.e., Allah is speaking. He says, have we not made the earth a container? It's a container of some kind. It's not a ball floating in space. It's a container. This is from chapter 21, verse 32. Allah is speaking. He says, we made the sky above them as a well-guarded ceiling, i.e. a firmament, but they have neglected the evidence of our existence therein. So kind of like Psalm 19, the firmament proclaims God's handiwork, kind of the same feeling. Of course, the God of Islam is not the God of the Bible, but the point is, the Quran, as you can see, is teaching you the same thing. All right, this is, moving on now, this is, which one is it? I think this is Aztec. Let's see. I put it in, yeah, it's Aztec. I can tell from the URLs because they're pictures that I uploaded, but this is Aztec cosmology. So you can see this is the Earth, their idea of the Earth, and you can tell the Earth has 4 corners, which it's interesting to me because this also has like 4 corners, seems to be of the heavens. You see there's the round and the square aspects. Very interesting. Now again, I'm not an Aztec specialist. I don't, I don't know how to decipher the meaning of all these different pictograms, but you can see what it reminds me of is 4 quarters of the earth and 4 quarters of the heavens too, because there's a verse like that in Revelation, or is it Revelation or Jeremiah? I think it's Jeremiah actually. Anyway, there's 4 quarters of the heavens, 4 winds, I think, are the one in Revelation. So you have these verses that are contradictory in the sense that some suggest that there's a circle of the earth, but then there are things that suggest that there's a square somehow, whether it's a trapezoid or the earth is, some kind of rectangle. Who knows? We'll look at that in future episodes, but this is Aztec cosmology, so you can tell kind of what's going on there. Of course, if you look into the papal cross and the Templar cross, the solar cross, this is kind of the same thing, is the sense that there's this four corners. And, some of it resembles, like the Baal cross with the solar worship they have. But I think there's also something to be said about this new world order they want with the four corners of the earth, basically. And then you have kind of this sense of a round. They love to do these things. Like if you can see, if I can find a good one. Here we go. You can see there's four corners, for east, west, north, south. But then there's also kind of a sense of a roundedness around it because of these rounded little corners. I don't know how to explain it. Like if you were to put a dome on it, the rounded parts would kind of fit with that, I think. So anyway, that's interesting. Who knows what the occult really believe? I know that the symbol for the earth in astronomy is a circle with a cross in it, or basically four quarters, which is interesting. Very interesting stuff. What is this one? Babylon. Yeah, this is Babylon. And you can see they believed in various firmament layers with, some sort of earth. Now, whether they believed in a circular earth, who knows? I don't really know. But they believed that earth there's Babylon, of course. They're the center of the world. And they had firmament. And you had the waters around the firmament, which is very interesting. Confirms what the Bible says. This is what's on the cover of this video, the Babylonian universe. Same thing. It's got these, the square. Notice the square. Notice the square earth. It's a ziggurat. And of course, above him, as above, so below. Of course, this is all occult stuff. But God did create duality, folks. God did create duality. There is duality in everything we look at. Duality is not evil. The occult uses duality to try to be like God. That's what's evil. But we live in a dualistic system. There is earth. There's underworld, right? There's some sort of underworld where perhaps there's even Tartarus, where the angels have been imprisoned in a void prison. There's different spheres maybe to the heavens. Who knows? The Bible doesn't really describe this. Some people think it does when Paul says, I went to the third heaven. He's not talking about a third layer of heaven, folks. He's not talking about a physical place. This is the mistake. He's talking about the future state, which is the eternal state, which is the third heaven. The first heaven was before the flood. We're in the second heaven now, and the third heaven is going to be when Jesus returns. Paradise. That's what he calls it, paradise. He's not talking about going to God's abode as paradise. Because if he was going to God's abode, then he would have a vision very similar to John, Ezekiel, Isaiah, these types of things. But either way, the Bible does say there's the heaven of heavens and there's heaven. So there's a sense of like there's what we see, and then there's the other side of that where God lives. How that works, who knows? Of course, there's a lot of mythology in that department. But that's Babylonian cosmology. Also, you can see Babylonian, like the ziggurats they built, and the Tower of Babel probably look like this, was a square. Of course, pyramids are square too, which again tells you everything, because pyramids are supposed to represent the earth, the world, and you're ascending to the top where the heavens are, and the heavens are a dome. They're a circular type of structure where, everybody does all these spiritual things and sacrifices and stuff, so you ascend to the heavens. It is replicating this idea to ascend to the heavens and be like God, which is very interesting. This is another rendition of the Tower of Babel, which is probably just a giant ziggurat. And they found it, I believe, Expedition Bible on YouTube documents this really well. Very fascinating video on the Tower of Babel and where it's at in modern day Iraq, I think. But again, these are square. These are square structures. People didn't really build domes. They built domes on top to symbolize the heavens because they knew the cosmology. The cosmology was a flat level plane, possibly a square of some shape, with the heavens being circular in nature. This is from William Warren, Babylonian and Babylonian Cosmology. And you can read Let's see what. Yeah, here we go. Section 1, it says the Babylonian heavens. Every diagram illustrated of the earliest Semitic cosmos hitherto given us by professed Assyriologists has provided but a single heaven, the Rakia or firmament of Genesis 1:6. That this is not enough must be manifest to any reader who is capable of following the few simple directions now to be given, namely. Then he goes on to talk about like the various layers that these people believed in and so on. So you can look into this for yourself. But what's the point? The point is that people believed in a firmament. Just like we looked at in the last episode with the firmament and the biblical attitudes on the firmament, which is very irrefutable. The firmament is something. It's something. And some people say it's solid. You know, there's evidence for it. There's evidence against it too, which is very interesting. And we'll look at that in the future episode. We look at the problems with the circular model. This is the Enuma Elish, which is, a Babylonian text, mythology, text about their gods and their cosmology. But I highlighted a part. This is, what is it, the fourth tablet? Yeah, so it's the fourth tablet. And if you scroll down, you can look this up online, various translations. And it says the following. He split her up like a flat fish into two halves. I believe this is Marduk fighting Leviathan, or Tiamat, which is the great serpent. One half of her he established as a covering for the heaven, so a physical covering. He fixed a bolt, he stationed a watchman, and bade them not to let her waters come forth. So there's waters above the firmament. He passed through the heavens, he surveyed the regions thereof, and over against the deep he set the dwelling of Nudimud. And the Lord measured the structure of the deep, and he founded Isara, a mansion like unto it. The mansion Isara, which he created as heaven, he caused Anu, Bel, and Ea in their districts to inhabit. So there are waters above, there's a firmament, and there's an abode that God dwells in, or the heavenly beings dwell in above. Of course, the Babylonians didn't believe in the God of the Bible, but the point is that these mythologies are shadows. You can tell that there's elements that resonate and reflect biblical truth, even though they're pagans, which is very important to understand that the common theme continually points to the same truth. This is from Buddhist. This is Buddhist cosmology. So you can see, and you can look this up for yourself, guys. Like I said, this is very casual today, but here is a circle, and then here's a square. This is the earth, and these are the heavens above, which is very interesting. Of course, these are probably different things symbolizing maybe parts of the heavens. Who knows? I'm not an expert in Buddhist cosmology, but I think it's very interesting. Here's another one. This is from Chinese. This is Chinese cosmology. Here's the earth. Now, don't think that this is a sphere. This is just the earth. This is a flat earth, and this is the heavens. So this is not depicting a sphere, what you're looking at. This is a flat plane, and they're the known world that they knew, and various basically layers to it, which is interesting because this kind of tells you, okay, I don't know what this is. Maybe this is the ice wall, so to speak. I don't know. It's very interesting. Maybe there's different layers beyond. Who really understands? But I know for certain that the earth is not a circle. It can't be. However, you can see the same thing. This is an enclosed cosmology. I think this is what, Tibetan? No, it's Chinese. Chinese again. Here's the earth. Here's the square, and then you have the circular heavens. Very interesting. Again, just take these in, look them up yourself. There's different elements. You have like the four corners. Same thing that the Bible talks about, like with the four corners of the earth, or the four winds, right? The four winds, the east, north, west, south wind. The four quarters of the heavens, right? Which is interesting because it's not corners, it's quarters of the heavens. Sections of the heavens, which is interesting. This is, I think, also Chinese. If you've ever had these little Chinese coins, same thing. Square, earth, circular heavens. Interesting. They use these coins for all kinds of things. Ceremonial coins, decorative coins, but these are very common in Chinese culture. This is Egyptian cosmology. Remember when we talked about Second Esdras? I think it was Second Esdras or First Esdras, one of those. It's an apocryphal text, but it mentions the spirit of the firmament, where God made the spirit of the firmament, which is interesting because the Egyptians believed this giant being was holding up the sky. Very interesting. The spirit of the firmament. Now, the Bible doesn't say that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Let me put it that way, because God has so many spiritual beings that he's created, like the wheels with the eyes, the various angels with the 4 animal types of heads. I mean, there's a lot of supernatural beings. So would it be possible that there is some spiritual being that is holding up the sky? That's interesting. That's interesting. I'm not saying that's the truth. I just think it's interesting. But either way, what does it tell you? It tells you that the Egyptians believed in this flat earth where you had the underworld, and of course you have the firmament holding up the sky. They believed that Ra, the sun, was basically moving across the sky, setting down, going through the underworld, coming back up and rising and coming across the sky again. Now, what's interesting about this is that setting is a problem for the flat model. It is a problem. You're going to see what I mean by that in a future episode, because flat earthers will argue, well, the reason the sun sets is because of perspective, which is, I don't think that's true. And it sounds really crazy, but I don't think that's true. But the question is, if it is setting, then how does that work on a flat model? How does that work on a flat model? That's a profound idea, because when it's setting, for example, in your place, you can call somebody else, and for them, it's okay, well, it's noon or whatever, right? So it's never actually setting, which is, again, there's such confounding evidence on both sides. That's what makes this such a mystery, folks. And I hope to reveal that mystery for you and to entice your curiosity to dig on your own. But this is what the Egyptians believed. In closed cosmology, this is similar to Enoch's gates, where there's a track for the sun. We'll talk about that in the future as well, where the sun is going basically through these gates through the sky. And again, the question is, how does that work on a square Earth? How do you have continuity? It's supernatural. Very interesting stuff. Here's another picture of the Egyptians. Again, there's this sense of a being that's holding up the waters. And there's a firmament, and it's in closed cosmology. Now remember, these are the same people that drilled holes that are 500 times more efficient than, in granite, mind you, than modern drilling methods. So you have to keep that in mind. You look at this, it's like, oh, look at these stupid people making these ridiculous drawings on their parchment. It's like, well, these are the same people that made some very fascinating megalithic structures that we can't reproduce today, and we have no explanation as to how they did it. So there's that. This is Greece, I think, initially Greece, but of course Greece very quickly turned into heliocentrism because of people like Eratosthenes. But even the Greek model, they believed, there's Olympus, where the heavens were, where the gods were. Helios, the sun, Selene, the moon, would go across the sky on tracks. You had an earth that was very, flat, motionless. You had kind of Tartarus, where basically you had, chaos and the void prison. Of course, this word is used in the Greek New Testament, Tartarus. It's used one time to describe the place of the angels. Now, I'm not saying that Paul is describing Greek cosmology, but he's using the word that the Greeks use for a void to describe something that does exist, which is a prison specifically made for principalities that God created. And of course, Jesus visited that prison after he resurrected to proclaim the victory over them. But this is Greek cosmology. And of course, again, these things change really quickly because the Greeks were very much into the occult and mystical practices. Through Eratosthenes, through Pythagoras, all these things very quickly changed. Israelite cosmology, of course, you're probably familiar with this one. You have a firmament, rakia. You have a circle of the earth somehow, however that works. You have the earth there. It's very flat and motionless. You have Sheol underneath. You have the foundations or the pillars of the earth, foundations of the heavens, local luminaries, windows of the heavens, waters above, and then, of course, the realm of God somehow. Now, this is interesting because is the water, is the dome a firmament, or I should say, is the firmament a dome, and then there's waters, and there's some sort of flat place that God is walking across, and that's another confounding thing because the Bible says that God walks across the vault of heaven. Well, he's not walking on a perfect dome. That doesn't make sense to me. Because again, the visions of Ezekiel, the visions of John, they see a flat glass that the throne is upon. So it would suggest maybe he's walking on the water. Maybe the water's level and he's walking on that surface. Jesus walked on water. So I don't know. Very interesting. You can let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But here's another one. This was a pretty popular meme people have seen, where you have God in the heaven of heavens. You have the gate of heaven, the waters above the firmament, the sky with the windows of heaven, Sheol, the pillars of the earth, the great deep. And of course, we looked at that in the, was it the first or second episode of this series? We looked at how they're discovering, scientists have discovered an ocean that is, however many times more massive than the Pacific Ocean, 700 kilometers below the Earth's surface. They're discovering these types of things more and more. It's like, can you even fathom such a thing? An ocean that is several times bigger than the Pacific Ocean, 700 kilometers below the Earth's surface. That's profound. And of course, the Bible tells you that there's a great deep. Who knows? Who knows what crazy things are lurking under there? I mean, it's just phenomenal to think about. There's so many unanswered questions in the world we live in. It's just such a mystery. But of course, these things, and you can see what they did, which is nice. They didn't separate multiple firmaments, which people believe. Again, Hebrew cosmology was not 7 layers of the firmament or 3 layers of heaven. No, you had heaven, which is the sky, and then you had the heaven of heavens, where God is. There's no third heaven. There's no 7 layers of heavens. These are all mythologies that you can see came from Babylon. Babylon had multiple layers of heavens. So those things, of course, influence God's people. This is, what is this one? Inca. This is Inca cosmology. You can see there's a circular type of heavens. There's a square earth in the middle. There's some sort of surrounding of the earth, maybe in multiple layers of surrounding, maybe multiple circles. Local light sources, but it's flat and motionless. It's the heavens that are moving. Again, these are the same people that built those enormous structures and cut them so precisely. I forgot to mention this too, but the Incas, I just remember these random facts from various times in my life, but the Incas, and you can look into this yourself, but the Incas had a mail system. I forget how exactly they had it, but they had this mail system using maybe colored beads or something. Somehow they had a mail system, but their mail system was more efficient than our modern mail system today. It's fascinating how they had these seemingly primitive technologies, but they're actually very profoundly efficient. So these are the same people that had, very advanced calendars, very advanced mail systems, very advanced, construction, astronomy, predictive models, and yet they believed a very different story of the Earth. This is, I believe, there's another one, also Incan, because this is the golden star map of the Inca, Peruvian cosmology in the sacred center of the Corichana. So you can see the star map, and interestingly enough, it seems that there's like a triangular firmament here. Here's the Earth. Interesting that there's 2 people here, maybe Adam and Eve type of thing. The tree, which is also interesting. These are biblical things. Maybe I'm wrong about the interpretation, but either way, here's the earth and the heavens above, which is kind of like, now maybe this is the shape of the rock, but I think it's intentional that they made this triangular, which is also interesting. Be interesting, because again, this is a different take on the firmament. There's the sun and the moon, local light sources that are underneath somehow. And the earth is it. This is it, folks. This is the universe. But again, that's the Incas. You can look into that. This is from Indonesia. Very fascinating structure. As you can see, if I can zoom in maybe, this is a square. These structures are enormous. These are enormous pyramids. There's a square base. And what do you have at the top? You have a circular heavens. Do you see the point? This is a square base, signifying the earth. And of course, once you ascend to the top and you're in the heavenly realm and doing your sacrifices and various things, you are communing with the gods, which are in a circular sphere, like a circular area, not sphere like sphere, but sphere is an area, place with a dome, which is very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Of course, that dome also has the point on it. The Most High, right? That's why he's called the Most High, because he's at the top of our universe. This one is Japanese. Also very interesting. You can see here's the square that symbolizes the earth. You have the sun and the moon that are doing their thing above, and they're moving around. Various gates, it seems like. There's even pillars too. There's like kind of a pillar to the earth type of thing. There's an underworld that's below the earth, and there's like the heavenly realm, which these are symbolized as circles. There's a circle of the earth that's around the square, and they have the holy tree in the middle. Of course, other cultures had this too, like Yggdrasil. We'll look at that. I think it was the Norwegian cultures. But you had the sky world, you had the earth, you had basically the heaven and the heaven of heavens. Same cosmologies, same concepts, which is interesting. Of course, they're represented differently, but you can see even like the luminaries, like these are, seems like, it looks like Saturn or something, but there's multiple Saturns, which is kind of strange. But it seems like everything is in the heavens. You see, it's enclosed, in the enclosure. Interesting. This one is from the Mayans. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit on it. You can see the Mayans believed in an arch in some kind, some sort of firmament. Mundo superior, which is the world above. Here's the earth, and it's divided into 4 quarters, north, east, west, south. There's some sort of tree in the middle, which is also really interesting. Of course, some people have used the circle map and say, see, the true Garden of Eden was actually the North Pole. They're hiding it from us, and all these types of things. I'm not super, it doesn't convince me. It really doesn't. And I'll talk about more of it in the future when we look at the circle map with the problems with the circle map. But there's reasons to not believe that for sure. However, there does seem to be some truth to this 4 quarters of the earth thing, because many cultures seem to believe it. There's a circle surrounding the earth. There's a tree in the middle. Now, does that represent the tree of the Garden of Eden? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe it's something else. Maybe there's like a world tree or something that supports the world. Who knows? I don't know. Ultimately, there's some general theme that these cultures have, that there's a center to the earth, and there's 4 quarters, and it's surrounded by a circle. Who knows? Who knows? Ultimately, we're just looking. This is, again, from the Aztecs, I believe. Let me just double check. I think it's Aztec. Yeah, or no, it's Maya. This is Mayan. But same thing. You see there's square pyramids, and you ascend to the top. Now, this one doesn't have a circle at the top, which is interesting. But, again, these are all based on cosmological knowledge that they had. The Mayans were very, astronomically aware culture, and so they believed certain things. This is Mayan cosmology, which again, these pyramids, just like the Babylonians, the pyramids represented the earth, because the earth is square. It's some sort of square shape. You have the 4 quarters, and then you have the circle that surrounds the earth with the heavens and the firmament and the luminaries doing their thing. Of course, you also had the underworld. It's fascinating. See, this one doesn't have a tree. Actually, maybe it does have a tree here. Kind of can tell, or maybe multiple trees holding maybe the pillars of the earth. That's what they do. And take these with a grain of salt, but what the goal is to look at these and see the overall pattern. And the pattern is the same. This one is, which one is? Mongolian. Interesting. What do you see? You see a circle, and you see a square with different quarters. And these, this is the circle representing the constellations, is what it seems like to be. How many constellations are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 12. 12 even constellations, which is what we see. And they move, and the sun goes through them, and that's a solar year. That's the original calendar. But you have the earth, which is represented as a square, which is very interesting. Mongolian culture. This one is Native American, I believe. Yeah, Navajo. These are different representations. You can see, again, the same idea, the square. You have a square type of thing with 4 quarters, and you have kind of a rounded heavens, which also has 4 quarters, which is interesting. The 4 quarters of the heavens. Here's another representation. Again, you have a circle around the earth, which is here. Now, again, is this trying to represent the earth as a circle? I'm not sure. But they're not telling you that the earth is a ball floating around in space. That's for sure. This one is also, I think, Navajo. Yeah, it's Navajo still. I could zoom in a little bit. You can see, again, what is the Navajo artist's rendition of these people's beliefs? Well, you had the 4 quarters of the earth, north, east, west, south, kind of a cross shape, and then you have the circle that surrounds the earth with various, these are probably winds, I'm guessing. The 4 winds. There's the firmament above, and then there's, the world above with the spirits. Of course, there's a world below too. It's some sort of underworld, and the earth is on some sort of foundation, but the earth is flat. It's not a ball. Never do you see these things represented as a curved surface. The thing that's curved is the heavens. Now, whether the earth is a circle or not, we'll debate that. We'll look at that in the future episode. But again, you see a common theme. This is, I think, from Nigeria. What is it? Yeah, Nigeria. Interesting. These are just tribal illustrations. What do you see? You see a flat earth, 2 people, which is interesting, male and female, Adam and Eve maybe. You had the luminaries. In this case, the luminaries are outside of the firmament, which is interesting. I don't know what this triangular thing is, but you see a firmament. You see a firmament over and above. This is how they were expressing their understanding of cosmology. This is Nordic. Yeah, Nordic with the Yggdrasil, the main tree that holds the world up. Of course, the Bible tells you the earth has pillars of the earth, right? There's something that's holding the earth up. What is that? Something standing on? I don't know. It's a mystery. Of course, you have the sense of a surrounding of some kind. Here's the earth that's being surrounded, and then you have the heavenly sphere, which is like a dome. In this particular illustration, it's illustrated as a circular earth, and some people will say, oh, this is what it is, but I don't think the earth is circular. I really don't, and we're going to look at that. But of course, the thing that matters is that it's covered by a circular heavens, and that it's flat. That's the thing that matters. All these cultures believe the same thing. This is pyramid structures from around the world. You can see they all have something in common. This is Iran. This is Egypt. You can see Iraq, Iran, Sudan, China, Egyptian pyramids, various places in Indonesia that we looked at with the square pyramid and the circular heavens. They all have a certain element to them. And of course, the pharaohs believed themselves to be like gods. All these people who were the god kings, the rulers, they believed they were gods. They were gods on earth. And so what's the point? At the top of the pyramid, you have the Most High, right? It's representation of the truth. Now, whether that means the firmament is a pyramid, who knows? But we know that there is one person at the top, and that's God. God is at the top. There's nobody else at the top. So there's a singular point at which all things converge in that sense, right? God is the source of all things, and from him, all things proceed outward. So that creates visually like a pyramid in some sense. And of course, we know the devil has appropriated the pyramid for his own purposes, for his own New World Order purposes. But the real pyramid is God is at the top, and everybody else, there's hierarchies and so on that report to him, and then there's humanity, and then there's, the animals and so on. There's a pyramid. There is a pyramid. God created hierarchy and structure, everything around himself. There's the counterfeit pyramid, which is the Illuminati scheme and the one world order. But pyramids are reflecting to you some sort of reality, folks. They're not just they just picked pyramid because that was the fun shape to do. No, the pyramid reflects to you cosmology, because there's the earth, and you ascend to the heaven, and there's the Most High, which is at a point. And of course, some of these have circular situations like the one in Indonesia and in Babylon and so on, but they reflect cosmological understanding. This is from Tibetan cosmology. Same thing. You see kind of, in fact, you can hardly see it here, but this is kind of like a pyramid. These are steps. It's drawn in perspective, which is interesting. But you have the 4 quarters. You have a circle of the earth that surrounds this square shape. And it's interesting because the square shape seems like steps. They're going up. And then at the top of that, you see like a dome structure, which is interesting. I don't know what this is, but you can tell that this is a circle of the earth surrounding a square, and the square is where the people live. And of course, there's other things too. There's luminaries and various personified deities and so on. But interesting. Just interesting. Just take it all in and see what you think. This is Tibetan again. Same thing. You see this one is drawn a little better. You can see from perspective. You see the steps going up, and then there's something they ascend to, and then there's kind of like a heavenly, sphere. But the earth, here's the earth, is surrounded by a circle. You have square or trapezoid type of shapes, polyhedron, polygon type of shape, actually, because it's 2-dimensional. But that is surrounded by a circle. So you have both the square type shapes and the circular type shapes. It's interesting this has like you could tell these are little mountains around it that are circling the Earth, which again, it's kind of like the ice wall, so to speak, or something. I don't know. Could be. Interesting. This is, I think, Vedic. Yeah, probably before they got into heliocentrism towards the, 5th or 6th century. But they also believed in a multiple layers of the heavens, flat, motionless plane. Of course, the luminaries are moving above and around that. But you can see this whole circular stuff comes from other places too, which is interesting to me because again, if the flat Earth thing is a psyop, and as usual, you have controlling both sides, right? You have the heliocentric model, which is the main narrative, and then you have the counter narrative, which is also controlled. They're both inspired in some sense off of the mystery religion, because there's always a counterfeit, folks. These things reflect to you some truth, but they're also wrong in the sense like this is, if you look at this picture, it's very vivid, but it's not. The Earth is not a circle. Again, I'll prove that to you. It's not a circle, and the sun cannot be moving in a circle around the Earth. That's impossible. But you see, these people were very into mysticism, and of course, India is the place of yoga, Kundalini, all kinds of stuff for the mystery religion, which is now coming into the forefront with the charismatic movement. So all these things are being woven into one common thread. That's why I don't trust the flat Earth movement. But you can see again the great ocean, the waters below, the waters below. There's above. There's some sort of shell of the Brahmanda, which of course is a firmament. Different layers of heaven and so on. So there's Mount Meru in the middle of the Earth, which is also interesting. Supposedly there's some sort of magnetic thing, which, maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe there's a magnetic source. But as you'll see, it seems to suggest that there's maybe two magnetic sources, which again, we'll talk about in the future. A couple more to go, almost done. This is, what is this? Let's see. Vedic. We're still on Vedic astrology. There's the turtle with the Earth, and of course, the heavens above. There's a snake firmament type of situation. But these things are enclosed cosmologies. That's the point. They're enclosed cosmologies. The Earth is not one in a million bajillion planets floating around in a void. You are in an enclosed cosmology with some sort of barrier between you and the waters above, and the spirit realm, and the waters below. This is what you can tell from all these cosmologies. This is also Vedic. And again, same thing, just different illustrations of what these people believe. This is the underworld. This is the heavenly realm. Flat, motionless plane. You could see a nice tetrahedral type of structure, like a square structure that ascends to the top, just like the Babylonian ones, with, it seems like to be like a little tiny dome on top, which is also interesting. You have the heavens. You have, the procession of the heavenly bodies like the sun and the moon going through maybe a firmament or ether of some kind. And of course you have like barriers between these things. And you have the heavenly realm where all the spirit beings are. So again, same stuff that we see all of the time. So that's it. Pretty much final thoughts on this. Ancient cultures universally believed in an enclosed cosmology. They had the same idea. Of course, they had different ways of representing it, different ideas as far as the specifics, but they all believed in a flat, motionless plane that was enclosed with some kind of enclosure, and there's waters above, waters below, local light sources. Now, as to the position and the manner of the movement of those light sources, who knows? We'll speculate on that more detail, but they all agreed on that. They all had the same kind of basic ideas, meaning they agreed with the Bible. Therefore, the Bible is true. It's corroborated by history of ancient cultures. It's corroborated by all the biblical statements that we looked at in the last episode. And of course, it's corroborated by science. We looked at that in the first episode with the horizon and the water. And we also looked at gravity and the gospel in the previous animated videos that I made for this series. So, very important. The Bible doesn't say that the earth is a circle. It doesn't necessarily literally spell it out for you that the earth is a square. It gives you certainly lots of clues as to that. But it says there is a circle surrounding the earth, which is true. And the question is, what does that mean? How do we interpret that? And that's the journey that we have ahead of us in a couple of episodes ahead. Many ancient cultures had the idea of a square within a circle, as you can hopefully see that. And of course, this presents the problem of continuity. How do things continue? See, the circle flat Earth says, oh, well, you just go east to west and you just loop back around. Yeah, that seems to solve the problem, but it actually makes even more problems, as we will explore in the future. So the question is, how do you have continuity? And the answer is probably that continuity is supernatural. And that's my goal, is to show you, is that continuity is probably supernatural, which is phenomenal. It brings your appreciation of God's creation to a whole new level. And that's my goal with this series. Anyway, the point is that the ancients were not flat earthers. They believed in an enclosed cosmology, but they weren't flat earthers in the sense of like, oh, they believed in a circular flat earth. Not necessarily. Some of them did, like some of the Vedic illustrations that we saw seem to suggest they maybe believed the earth was a circle. But here's the thing, I'm more akin to believe that was just a representation of the known world within the circle of the earth. Does that make sense? That's different than saying, like, the Gleason map. They didn't believe in the Gleason map because people didn't have the whole earth mapped out at that point. I think they were just saying, here's the known world, and the known world is surrounded by a circle, and there's heavens. Doesn't mean they believe the earth is a circle, because a lot of those cultures also had pictures of a square earth that was surrounded by a circle. Very, very interesting. So I hope this has been informative and edifying. I remember not to get lost in rabbit holes when it comes to this stuff, because the more you research it, again, you'll find most of the people talking about like ancient aliens, Tartaria, Nephilim, Anunnaki, secret knowledge from the ancients, that kind of stuff. It's easy to get lost. The point was today is to see a pattern. And that pattern is that heliocentrism is a lie. It's something that came up very recently in Earth's history, all right, if we're talking relatively speaking. Heliocentrism is not this ancient thing that everybody knew. Oh, everybody knew the Earth was a ball spinning in space. Absolutely not. All these cultures believed relatively similar things, and we saw in the last episodes that the physical evidence, the biblical evidence, and today the historical evidence all agree with the Bible, that the earth is a flat, motionless plane with some sort of enclosure that divides the waters above from the waters below with local light sources. That's the biblical view. As to what specifically the shape of the earth is, as to where the sun and the moon are, what they're doing, who knows? All those things will be topics of future speculation. But look, anyone telling you that the point is that anyone telling you that, well, we've known the earth has been a ball for 2,000 years, this is lying. This is straight lying. It's not true. Because most of cultures believed something very different. Anyone who says the ancient cultures were primitive has no clue. They have no clue what they're talking about, plain and simple. You'll see that even NASA's eclipse predictions is, oh, we can predict the eclipses. No, well, guess what? NASA got their eclipse predictions from Babylon, from Babylonian records. And you saw what the Babylonians believed as far as their cosmology. So go figure. NASA is using, quote unquote, flat earth cosmologies, eclipse predictions in a heliocentric model. So what does that tell you? What that tells you is that math can justify anything as long as you don't question your assumptions, you can justify anything, because math tells you about relationships. So they're using eclipse predictions from a culture that was 4,000, well, no, not 4,000, but, well, yeah, I mean, 1,000, 15, like 500 BC was main Babylon, but even before that they were around. So, 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, something like that, that believed in an enclosed cosmology with a flat, motionless plane, and they were able to predict eclipses. And NASA, who is peddling the heliocentric lie for you, is using the same tables and predicting eclipses in a heliocentric model. So go figure. The point is, don't be fooled. When it comes to cosmology, there's a lot of misinformation on the left and on the right. The heliocentric model is a total lie, but then also the flat Earth thing is a psyop, and that's something to walk the narrow road on. But the point of today is this, folks. Even the pagans have agreed and support what the Bible says, in the sense that it's an enclosed cosmology. Even the pagans are testifying to the truth. So the Bible is true, and heliocentrism is wrong. We'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care, and God bless.